Today's Smart Safety Connection seminar. My name is Hannah, and I'm one of the Diversity and Equity Fellow for Safety 21, a US DOT National University Transportation Center. The Smart Safety Connection seminar series is sponsored by Safety 21 as an opportunity for faculty to showcase their current transportation projects. It is also an opportunity for students, fellow faculty, deployment partners, and the broader community to engage and network with researchers, highlight opportunities for involvement, and foster future interdisciplinary collaboration. Please note this session is being recorded and all participants' microphones are muted. If you're joining us online, please send your question through the chat, or if you're here in person, feel free to raise your hand. You do not need to wait until the end of the presentation to ask your questions. You're welcome to ask them throughout. Now I'd like to introduce today's speaker. Nat Beuse is the Chief Safety Officer at Aurora, the company delivering the benefits of self-driving technology safely, quickly, and broadly. His team establishes and manages Aurora internal and external corporate safety strategy and policy, and conformance to those strategies and policies. His team also works with industry standards groups and regulatory bodies to offer guidance to support the development of best practices and safety standards. Prior to Aurora, Nat was head of safety at Uber Advanced Technologies Group. Before working in the private sector, Nat oversaw the nation's motor vehicle safety research program, including automated vehicles for the Department of Transportation as the Associate Administrator for Vehicle Safety Research at the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. Nat is on the board of Mothers Against Drunk Driving, the board of Lifesavers.org, an advisory board member for DYM Sense, one of the 3 senior leadership council members of the Automated Vehicle Safety Consortium, a member of the technical working group to implement advanced impaired driving prevention technology, a board member of ITS America, and member of the organization's Standing Committee on Automated and Connected Vehicles, and an active member of SAE International. Please help me welcome Nat Beuse as he discusses supporting safe autonomous freight operation with SMS.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for that warm welcome. I need to shrink that down because you would think I didn't actually have a day job with all those other board positions. Happy to be here. Sorry for being a little late. This campus is confusing, I think is a good way to put it. Lots of little buildings everywhere, but hopefully we can make up some time and leave time for Q&A. So we'll just jump right into it. I start every presentation with this slide because it's super important to ground everybody on where Aurora stands on this stuff. So you hear a lot of times that tech gets accused of moving fast, break things quickly, this kind of mantra. That's not us. The 3 words, safely, quickly, broadly, are very deliberate and in that order. We understand that the product that we're building has to be safe. We want to deliver it quickly and for it to have the benefits that we all think it will have in terms of efficiency and safety and movement of people and goods, that we need to get there broadly. One of the other things to point out in this is safety is not just something, there's no such thing as absolute safety. I think most people understand that. But in this particular technology and where Aurora is heading to first, it's a business-to-business relationship. So it's not rideshare first for us. So we have to convince a lot of folks that we are safe. And so starting out with what are we actually building? Because there's a lot of variety in this space. You have some people that are just operators. You have some people that are building their own vehicles with its own, they call it form factor, plus the technology. We like to position ourselves a little bit differently. So in today's world, we are building what we call the Aurora Driver, which is all the software, hardware, and services that it takes to make a self-driving vehicle useful. We will quickly move to an area where then we will only focus solely on kind of the software piece. So today we carry freight in Texas for customers. You can sort of view that as the trying to learn their business to understand how our product can be useful to them. But we have no interest in being a shipper. We have no interest in building trucks. We really want to focus on what we do best, which is building these components. So we have a lot of strong partners in order to make that happen. So maybe starting out with Volvo and PACCAR. So why do we need those folks? Well, those folks have been building trucks for a very long time. Just between these two, they represent a pretty sizable share of the US market. And there really is only like 4 players in the United States left. So it's these two, it's Navistar and Daimler. So we have a good foundation for which to build on. These companies are well known in the freight industry. You may not know this, but in the freight industry, companies will sometimes only go with a particular OEM. This simplifies their maintenance cycle and things like that. Drivers get very used to driving a specific platform, but some of them have a variety. So we have to be flexible, and so we have to work with both. On the other side, you see some of the folks that are actually carrying freight for all of us in the country. So it is definitely a true statement. People will say it, and it's kind of hard to understand, but basically everything we interact with in our daily lives comes to us by truck in some way, shape, or form. A lot of freight moves in the country, and so this is just a handful of the freight folks that we work with. Some names you might recognize, like Werner. If you're like me and you spend a lot of time driving on the turnpike back and forth to DC, you'll tend to see some Hirschbach trailers. They're the ones that almost look like they have a lot of beautiful coloring on the trailer. They mostly carry refrigerated products. And then, of course, we all know companies like FedEx. The folks down below you might not know so much. So we have a partnership with Ryder. Ryder is very well known in the industry. They do vehicle maintenance and repair type activities. So think truck breaks down, need a tire, they have a contract with Ryder, they go fix the tire. And then Continental. So Continental is what we would call in the auto industry as kind of a tier 1 supplier. Continental is very well known in the auto industry. They make a lot of components. You might have heard of a company like Bosch. They're similar in that way. You might know them also for making tires. They make a lot of different products, and they are very well known for what they do, really top class engineering firms. So how do all these people fit together? So Volvo and PACCAR, our system goes on their trucks. The fleet folks, they use our product. Ryder helps us keep our products up to date and running on the road. And then Continental is a partnership that we have coming online in 2027, where they're going to actually be manufacturing our computer and all those components at scale. So we're going to go quickly from a few handful of units to a bunch of different units. So that's a little bit about what we're up to, just to make sure we're all in the same place. And so when we think about self-driving, as I mentioned, one of the things we have to do is prove that it's safe. And for us, we've come up with, you can view this as the goal of the product is that it's acceptably safe on public roads. And so you have to think about safety as a comprehensive envelope when you think about self-driving. And so in this space, this sort of simple statement begs a lot of questions. So you might think of questions like, as you're sitting here listening to me, can you drive in a straight line and navigate the roads effectively? What happens if the tire goes flat or the computer has a problem? The truck just can't stop, right? It has to be able to handle those issues. A lot of things that we think about is organizationally, are we ready to operate a self-driving fleet of vehicles, right? It's one thing to build a cool robot. It's another thing to make that robot useful in the world. And so you have to have an organization operations that are ready for that. We have to think a lot about the product being misused. This is an area of engineering that maybe doesn't get a ton of attention, but in the self-driving space, we actually have to think about this a lot. People challenging the vehicle, people throwing things at the vehicle, all this kind of stuff. And then another key component of what we think about in that term, are we acceptably safe on public roads, is are we good partners with regulators? So you can see we start to be very on the engineering side, things we all understand, functional safety stuff, but then we take a view that it's a whole systems kind of approach. And so regulators, the public, they're an important piece of, is this vehicle acceptably safe on public roads? And so we have to think about those questions. And so for us, we've kind of bent a lot of these questions into these buckets. And these buckets are pretty self-explanatory, right? And so you can imagine for each one of these buckets, there's lots of questions that have to be answered. And so the way we think about that is developing evidence for each of those questions. And so, can the Aurora driver safely navigate, right? There's got to be some evidence. Think of requirements, maybe test coverage, those kind of things, and so on and on and on. And so you might ask, well, how do you know you haven't achieved that evidence? Well, part of that evidence then gets these kind of different things. So you can think of things like policies and programs. You can think of things like hundreds of requirements. You can think of things of test reports that show we've met those requirements, operational procedures, right? And then you can, as I mentioned, partnership where you might have standing agenda items or proof that you actually went and met with the regulators. Actually, one of our partners recently has asked me to actually prove to them that we've actually met with regulators in Texas and that Texas is ready for us to operate. And so we put all of this stuff in these things called evidence, and it actually becomes something called a safety case. And so think about the safety cases, all of those pieces of evidence that go together to kind of prove that we're acceptably safe on public roads. Now, buried in that is something that we call safety management systems, or SMS. Maybe a little history about SMS. So SMS is a pretty well-known technique that's used in basically every other safety critical industry with the exception of the auto industry. Trains, planes, ships, all of those different industries use some version of SMS. We took those learnings and we needed to figure out how to apply it to self-driving, because you just can't take what the aviation sector does and just carbon copy it and throw it on freight. And so this is how we kind of think about it in the traditional lens. So I'll walk you through this slide. So in our safety case, right, we say, can the organization respond to complaints from employees about safety issues, right? SMS has a way to deal with that. They kind of embed that in what they call safety culture. Do you have programs and policies in place for when employees raise issues? Are those issues adjudicated? Are they raised to management in a way that management can make decisions on them? Are they, do you, as an organization, do you have things in place that when those issues reoccur, you can go back in and understand why they reoccurred if your mitigation didn't help? So you can think of a lot of safety policies like that. Grounding is another one, right? We believe in a culture where anybody in the company can ground the fleet, cease operations. Think of, if we're on the manufacturing side, you think of stop the line authority. Very powerful program that empowers the employees to kind of own safety, but you have to have a policy in place in order to do that. Another key piece of this, though, is I can write, and my team can write all the policies in the world, but if the employees don't know what they are, they don't actually do anything. So you have to talk about them. And that's SMS lingo, you call this safety promotions. Basically what you do is you go out and you have training programs, you have proof that you did those training programs, you assess those training programs, but all of that is about basically promoting safety at the company. The other piece you have on the other side is kind of this safety assurance function. So you will hear safety professionals often talk about, okay, it's good you have a policy, it's good that the employees know about it, but how do you know it's actually working? And so that's kind of the safety assurance side. So what we could do is we go around and we say, okay, we have a safety policy, I'll pick one, on driver training, all right? Probably 5 years ago when it was developed, it was good. Maybe we need to change it. And so that's what the safety assurance function does. It goes out and evaluates these programs to make sure they're still meeting the intent. And then kind of under all that is something called safety risk management. So safety risk management is this idea that basically the right decision makers in the company have the necessary information to manage the safety risk, right? So if all the information is somewhere buried in the organization and the executives never know about it, well, it's really hard to manage your safety risk. So we have programs that we've set up where we routinely, let's say, meet monthly, where my team drives the agenda. And we have kind of some key executives, think about heads of software, heads of hardware, the CEO himself, who we call the accountable executive. We meet and we review the safety risk around the company. And we kind of split it up. Some days we talk about the product that we're shipping and closing our safety case and what's going on with that. Other times we're talking about the surveys that we just did for employees and how they're feeling about safety. Sometimes we're talking about specific safety concerns that are very significant based on our rubric, and we want to talk about them. And so that makes sure that all three of these bubbles kind of interact, but you can see there's some strong overlap to ensure that you have a safety management system in place to ensure that everything is working like it's supposed to. Because again, you can have a safe product out in the world, but if the management team doesn't know what's happening on the road, or employees aren't raising issues that they're seeing before they manifest themselves on the roads, you can see how you can quickly find yourself in a situation where you're not delivering on your mission of being safe. And so we think this is a super important tool in our kind of, we'll call it safety toolbox, for how we're managing safe operations of freight on public roads. So as I said, so like there's these kind of key components for our SMS system, but we didn't stop there. So one of the things that we did at Aurora is we work a lot with other industry players developing best practices. And so there's a particular group that we're focused on, which is called the Automated Vehicle Safety Consortium. So these are like-minded companies that today are all working on level 4 systems. So it includes people like Waymo, people like us, some players you might not heard about. Zoox is one that's out there that's in there. Volkswagen is in there, so on and so forth. And so we all get together and we work on safety best practices. Aurora, because we were the leader in SMS at the time, actually took the lead pen basically and drafted this information report / best practice. And basically we outlined all of our learnings for how to set up an SMS within your company, because a lot of companies, particularly when we first did this at the time, were like, I don't know where to start, this is too big, and they go talk to some airline folks, and the airline folks make them seem like they have 10,000 people running around doing SMS type activities. You don't need to do all those things to have an effective SMS. You grow SMS with the size of your operation and your organization. And so we wrote this, and it has some very key components, like I talked about, safety assurance, safety culture, safety policies, safety risk management, and we kind of shared our learnings with the industry. And one of the unique things about AVSC is that all the members who work on a best practice together agree to actually do it. Unlike other industry best practices where people will go work on them and they don't do anything with it. We see this a lot sometimes in some of the other standards groups where you'll have a bunch of folks who aren't even working on products show up to these meetings and start advocating for things who have no idea how that's going to actually go in the real world because they don't have to implement it. Here, we hold a very high bar that you actually have to implement whatever's put out. And so we were pretty happy with this work product, but we didn't stop there. Just late last year, this took almost 6-7 months to set up, but the results came out late last year, is we wanted to prove to the industry that you could actually get accreditation. So accreditation is a big thing for standards, right? And when you get a standard accreditation, that means that you've achieved a level of maturity that an outside person who may not be an expert in that domain can come in and look at and say, yeah, they're doing all these things that they say they're doing, and there's proof that they're doing it. And so we hired Sud, who's it's a global company, very, very big on this kind of work. They do a lot of other things, but this is one key pillar that they do. And we asked them to come in and assess our safety management system against the best practice to say, are we doing the things that we said we were doing? Is there proof that we're doing it? And go tell us what the answer is. So they came in, and there's a lot of people think there's you run around and you kind of prep all the people they're going to talk to. Yeah, there was none of that. They just came in, they gave us a list of random people that they wanted to talk to. They talked to those people. They asked for documentation. There was no we'll get it back to you in 2 weeks. We had to give it to them right away. And they assessed us. And what they came out with was basically you guys are doing so good, we couldn't even find anything really to ding you on, basically, which if you know anything about accreditation companies, their whole job is to go find something so that you can hire them back to fix the thing that they found. That wasn't the case in this point. And so we're really proud of this. And then not too soon after we did this, other industry players now are following suit and kind of doing the same kind of thing, whether it's their SMS or some other aspect of their safety programs. And so that is what I had lined up. I know I went through really fast because I was running late, but happy to answer any questions about this very important tool, which is, I would call it, very much supported of the engineering functions that need to happen when you're developing and shipping an autonomous freight product. That's it. Yeah, happy to answer questions.
If anyone in the room has questions, you can just raise your hand and then I'll keep my shot.
Yeah, do you need me to get out of this? Okay. Sure.
Thanks very much for coming.
Yeah.
It's very interesting. You're doing some testing in Texas, I understand,
Yes.
right now.
Yes.
How's that working out with inclement weather? There was just a big snowstorm down in
Yeah.
Texas.
Yeah, so I'll take that answer in two phases and tie it back to the SMS. So part of my team is also responsible for EHS type programs. So, you can think of that as, most people think of it like spills and falls, but there's other aspects of it, which is there's a storm coming. How are we going to handle operations? Should we even operate? Are the employees going to be safe? That kind of thing. And so from that aspect, that part of our safety program was well functioning, right? So 4 days in advance, we have a plan. We kind of have a T minus 4 days kind of thing to up to a weather event where there's a plan in place. People monitor the weather conditions or certain criteria, say, okay, if this is met, then we can't have people come into the office, et cetera. So they executed that flawlessly. From a technology perspective, right now we're validating our driverless product for kind of nice conditions, we'll say. A little bit of rain, but not much, definitely not snow. So why is that? Because we want to get on a path where we have something out in the world that's useful and then quickly solve some of those other issues. And so we've operated the product in light snow, heavy rain, but we're not prepared at this time to say that we've matured our approach there, that we would pull the driver in those kind of scenarios. The other thing we want to look at, though, is obviously the road conditions have to be good, right? If there's no friction surface, we probably don't want to be operating driverless trucks out there, which was the case in Houston. There was like kind of almost citywide, semi-statewide, like we don't want people out here. There was direct communication from state DOTs about not wanting people on the road. And so, of course, we take that into account too. But from a technology maturity perspective, it does work in those conditions, but we're just not prepared to say we're ready to pull the driver in them.
So you began by sharing how the mission is that your vehicles are acceptably safe to operate on roads. Could you say more about the acceptance?
Yeah. It's a good question. I didn't think I was going to get out of here with someone not asking me that. So acceptably safe means for us that we've satisfied ourselves. So how are we satisfying ourselves? So in that safety case framework that I talked about initially, there are a number of claims that have to be closed. And those claims fall into those different buckets that I talked about. And so what we did was we worked out with the engineering teams well in advance, let's say a claim around requirements. The claim might say something like you have the right requirements for your operational design domain, right? Still pretty vague, but you can get pretty specific, right? Because then you say, okay, in this operational design domain, I need to know how to change lanes. I need to know how to stop at a stop sign. Oh, my ODD has stoplights in it. I need to know how to do that. So you can kind of start to break those down, and those drive develop requirements. So the claim that says, do I have all the requirements? Yep. So we close those claims. But we still might have some tests, right? These tests might be still being built. We might have some failing tests that we need to fix. And so that claim remains open until that work is done. And so we've methodically gone through all of these claims across the safety case and have closed some down, and there's still some that remain. And so in a few short weeks, we'll be giving our business review update as a public company. And we'll be reporting on our progress on closing that safety case. And so, can't say what the number will be, but, it will be good. And I think the way we think about it is we have so many things in the background that ensure that we're not judging our own work, so to speak, to kind of assure ourselves that when we say a claim is closed, it's actually closed. And so we're leveraging, traditional industry best practices, like I mentioned. Those are all different specific claims within the safety case, but there isn't, I want to be clear, there isn't some magic metric that says, oh, once we achieve 0 disengagements, we're done, right? This is something that the industry has gotten itself in trouble in the past by these sort of like one-line answers to what is safe enough. So our answer is you got to close the safety case. hopefully it looks like ours, but you have to close some version of that you've done a lot of work. I can tell you right now, there are many runs where our truck drives, where the VOs, vehicle operators in there, aren't doing anything. Like the truck just does its thing. It would be a bad day for safety if that was the metric to say, well, you only have to do that one time and then it's safe to ship. No, you have to do some work. And so for us, we've embedded all of that in our safety case. And that's where we're still methodically closing it, and we'll be closing it all the way to 100% here soon.
Got it. And on the safety case, I'm sorry, I have a quick follow-up.
Yeah.
You also mentioned that you measure your safety culture
Yes.
among your employees.
Yes.
Could you say a little bit more about the measurement?
Yes. So we have, every year for a while now, we have very specific questions on safety in our, what we call our company survey. So that company survey covers everything from how do you feel about the food in the office or stuff like that, right? But also there's a specific section on safety. Within that, we ask very specific questions. I'm trying to think maybe 2 or 3 that might help understand what we're doing. So one might be, do you feel like you know how to report a safety concern, right? Or another one might be, do you feel like Aurora will respond to your safety concern? And so we measure that. And then we have other ones about like, do you think that the company executives take safety seriously, right? So yes, it's a bit qualitative, but if you measure that over time and you keep the same statistics over time, then you can start to measure deviations. And so what we're looking for is hotspots within the company, because the overall company metric is really good. Like you talk to most safety experts, like we're getting high response rates. So the company over like 80+% response rate in the company. Plus on the safety engagement side, that score is in the 90s. And so what we look for though is not that. That's a good metric. My team likes it. Yeah, good. Okay, but we care where within the company are there issues. And so we drill down at the kind of almost at the office level, team level to say, okay, this team though, their score is going in the wrong direction. Let's go figure out what's happening over there. That's one way. The other way we measure it is like kind of our rate of safety concerns. So you can imagine a scenario where if you went for like 3 quarters and your safety concerns, let's say we're at 10 a month, and all of a sudden in 1 quarter they went to 0, and you didn't know, you weren't looking for that, probably would miss that something's going on there within the company. And so we measure that, and we have triggers. So if that happens, we'll go look and see what's going on there. Do we need to do some more company-wide discussion at all hands or something like that? But those are kind of some of the ways that we do it. And other ways we look at it, we obviously look at like employee exit surveys. We have questions of safety on there. But it's less about coming up with like, ooh, we achieved this number, it's good. We really are looking for trends and fluctuations in those trends so that we can understand where we're going.
Yeah. We have a question online that
Yeah.
we're jumping because Raj just put this online.
Is it a question from Raj?
There's a question.
I can't answer questions from Raj.
He's wondering if you could provide some insight on how the US DOT views deployments with these capabilities
Yeah.
and the regulatory requirements that work for human operated vehicles.
Yeah. Okay, without getting myself in trouble. Was obviously we had a change in administration, and I, unlike you, had to pay attention to this stuff. And the incoming, well, looks like he will be the incoming secretary, had his confirmation hearing just last week. He was very positive on AVs, talking about we need a AV framework. You can hear the rhetoric in DC is starting to change more towards AVs as a kind of national economic competitiveness, national security issue, which is where it was when I left the department. So it's good to see us come back to that kind of framing, because I actually really believe that. And I think that they are talking about some sort of AV framework. So we'll have to wait and see what that actually means. So that's on like pure self-driving side of things. On the kind of what you can buy in your passenger car today side of things, they seem to be still focused on lots of regulatory activity around like driver monitoring. Seems to be something that the agency is looking at very, very closely. But they're also looking at to kind of push the boundaries of some of the call it crash avoidance features, like automatic emergency braking, which stops the vehicle if you're not paying attention. But they just got sued by the auto industry last week on that particular rulemaking, and just today the new administration has issued a pause in that rulemaking. So there's a lot of activity happening in DC. We'll have to see how this all shakes out, but I think there will still be, if I were to say a change will be, we need to do something with AVs that kind of positions the US in the right framing, and then, kind of the other stuff will come along. Yeah, sure. So somebody had a question, you had a question, but.
Yeah, I was wondering if you could share any insights into if you're doing any work like analyzing what your autonomous trucks would mean for like traffic levels on the roads that they're driving on.
Not as much. What we are looking at is kind of what are the fuel efficiency gains that could be had. I think the way I would answer your question is there's this idea that it's going to be like we'll wake up one day and the whole world will be self-driving vehicles. Eventually we will get there. What fleets are concentrated now is really on how to integrate this into their existing fleets, which is a little bit different than the rideshare. And to be clear on that, right? Rideshare very much is a different business case, right? You have to have volume for it to be available for people because people hate waiting apparently. And so, but on freight, our CEO likes to say, Chris, the toilet paper doesn't care if it gets there in 6 hours or 8 hours, right? It's about consistently getting there on the schedule that it was supposed to get there. And so it's not like we're going to add a whole bunch of new trucks to the ecosystem. It's more like integrated into the existing ecosystem. And the two big benefits there will be safety and efficiency. And then the traffic piece is a different thing, which has to do with, more vehicles kind of in the mix. And I don't think we envision more vehicles in the mix. It's more of a substitution kind of thing over time.
So what are the sort of liabilities that you're running into in terms of I would assume ideally you're looking to one day not have a driver,
Yep.
or right
Very
now they
soon.
have to check for just mud flaps and stuff,
Yeah.
Those things that might not be monitored
Yep.
by a system like that. How, what sort of challenges are you hitting with that?
Yeah, good question. So we kind of take the view that we want the truck to start its life at the terminal, so to speak, with 0 defects. So we have also inspections. These are federally required, by the way, on the freight side, unlike on the light vehicle side. So we have to do those things. And so one of the things we work through with Customs and Border Patrol, for example, is this idea that we can inspect the truck and we can send them that information so that the truck doesn't have to stop at their weigh station. Federal regulators were involved in all of that too. So that's on we'll call it the easy stuff: mud flaps, brakes working, tires aren't bald, that kind of stuff. En route though, the truck still has to be safe, right? Stuff happens, pothole, busted tire or whatever. So that's our whole fault management system has to be able to respond to that and get the truck to a safe state. So we have to detect some of those things. Now, we might not be directly detecting the air pressure in a tire, but we can tell via VI controls whether the truck is starting to act a little squirrely. Things like if a light goes out is no different today. A driver will typically continue their mission until they get to home base. And so my team and the engineering teams are going through right now and sort of delineating those that are hey, this is the kind of thing that needs to go stop right away. These are the kind of things that we can continue the mission. And there's even a next step, right? Aviation, for example. Aviation, sometimes we've all experienced this. You get on the plane, we can't go. The maintenance needs to come on to do something. Sometimes they don't fix the thing, but they make a call that it's still okay to fly us from point A to point B. And so we're doing that process too. So it's not that dissimilar from what you would experience in any other large operational context. There's still humans involved in making sure that this product goes down the road in a safe way. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just a bit curious about the vehicle operators.
Yes.
Themselves. How do they feel about their job? How does that compare to manual driving? Sometimes without driving, they get a bit bored.
Yes.
I was asking, if they get bored, sometimes may lose vigilance.
Yes.
Yeah, how does that?
Yeah, so there's this very, very good question. And so think of it as a journey. So in the early days, we had a vehicle operator and a right seater. So you had both of those folks, one because you had a system that was probably very immature, and then you needed kind of a lot of engineering support to tag certain interesting events or certain scenarios. So that's kind of how you can broadly think of those two functions. But there's also kind of a subtle safety thing where sometimes the right seater might see something that the the person who's sitting behind the wheel didn't see, and then they kind of serve as a second pair of eyes and ears, so to speak. Our system now is mature enough where we're starting to have less and less use for that right seater. And the vehicle operator who's sitting behind the driving, tasks, as I mentioned, we're having many runs these days where they're not doing anything for 200 miles of roadway, are getting to the point where, we are having to do other things to make sure they're not fatigued to avoid the situation that you pointed out. So we have a whole fatigue program where we're looking at, are they still vigilant? We have metrics around, are they reporting fatigue, taking days, that kind of thing, and we have some other techniques that we're doing in the background. Really, really important because there's this theme in autonomy, which is your system is so good, but not over the finish line yet, and that's kind of the region where you kind of have to be the most vigilant. And so we feel pretty good about where we are because, again, we're leveraging the safety case. So our safety case is such at a high percentage that we feel like the areas where the system is not ready yet are not areas that are going to happen like in a split-second notice. They're more like a unique construction scene that we still are trying to figure out how we want to behave around that, right? And so that's a slow event. That's not all of a sudden the truck is going to go veer off, right? And so that's kind of how we're managing a lot of oversight and a lot of making sure that the vehicle operators feel empowered. So one of the things we have them do, for example, is they fill out a survey for us on all their runs to say, one, I feel like the Aurora driver is performing well in these areas. These are some areas that I feel like need some support. So all that kind of feeds into their confidence level. You asked me how do they feel about it. If you talk to any one of them, we have a few videos on our website, some of them will use a kind of paternalistic tone, which is like, this is like their baby that they've been nurturing for, in some of these cases, years, and they're getting ready to send it off into the wild. And many of them came from, because they're all CDLs, so many of them came from other trucking companies, and they will tell you that they view this as kind of their big contribution to make the world a safer place, because they've seen a lot of stuff happen on the roadways. So with our folks, they're very excited about it. They will tell us, and I've been in the truck when this happened, so I go for rides and, we have bio breaks, right? Gotta go to the bathroom. And we'll stop at a rest stop. And on the I-45 corridor in Texas, lots of trucks. So there's lots of trucks in the truck stop, very few cars. And you'll just engage in conversation with other truck drivers. And some are like, this is really cool. I see you guys a lot because most of those guys are doing the same route. And so they see us all the time. I remember when I went the last time, one of them said, my goal is just to sit behind you guys and you're going to make sure that I'm not going to get in trouble. So it's kind of an interesting dynamic. And then we've also had some other people that have challenged the truck. And in those cases, we kind of work with law enforcement to at least let them know. But it's been more positive than negative, I would say, particularly with the truckers. Now, that's not what you read in the paper, which is where labor is all upset about all this kind of stuff. And there, I think that's a different conversation between what the local folks say and what the national people are saying. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, good question.
How do you balance safety and efficiency? So
Yeah.
The safest way is always to not going anywhere. To do anything, you have to take some risk. But
Yes.
How do you balance that?
Yes. So that bubble that I talked about, the safety risk management, right? So in our safety case, right, we have claims that the company must do X, Y, and Z. And maybe sometimes they don't meet that all the way. And so we have to assess what is the risk of that, right? And so we have approaches where we understand the risk of those tasks. The other way we think about it is on a pure performance level. So a good example, pedestrian lying down in the road, right? I don't know about you, but pedestrian lying down in the road at 62, 75 miles an hour, really hard to see with our little human eyes. Computer can do it a little bit better, I'd say a lot better, but at some point there's still physics involved. And so we have to assess then, well, how good do we need to be with that particular use case? And then if that use case arises, are we okay with, the risk that's going to happen there? Or when someone jumping out at the last minute in front of the truck. There's only so many G's you can put the truck in before you cause bad things to happen. And so you have to assess that. So the way we think about that is through this idea of we want the Aurora driver to be good and courteous and not do things that would put someone else in danger. So a pedestrian lying down in the road, We're like, we're gonna try like all we can to get to a stop if that were to happen. But if for some reason happens to be 50 line of cars on the left side of us and we can't get over, we're not gonna go just change lanes into those cars. So that's how we think about balancing the safety perspective. Right now, if the government comes out and says, we don't want you guys to do that anymore, we want you to careen into the cars, well, I'm sure there's gonna be a big public debate about that, whether that's the right thing. But right now, there are no such rules governing all of that. And to be clear, like a lot of people, oh, this is like the trolley car problem. No, this is not the trolley car problem. This is legit like engineering where we wanna test the truck in those scenarios so we understand that risk balance. And it's not efficiency per se, but it's more about, have you convinced yourself that you've satisfied the requirement enough? So like our requirement might be, you should keep an appropriate distance around VRUs, right? And so that's how we think about it. So that gives you a little bit of insight.
So have some kind of like risk qualification method?
Yes,
And
yes.
also you have some like predefined like a.
Governing rules, yeah.
Yeah, something like that.
Yep, yeah, exactly. Cool.
I'm gonna actually ask Hannah to come back up and play you off. We appreciate you.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Can I ask
Thank
one
you.
more question? Sorry, sneak in
Real
real
quickly, real quickly.
Back to like the safety efficiency thing,
Yeah.
and I don't wanna confuse like electric and autonomous too much,
Yeah.
but it sounds like you're probably using electric battery.
We have lead acid batteries on board that are kind of the supplement, but the powertrain is diesel.
Is it heavier? Is what I was.
That is what the manufacturers are
Okay.
working towards. I think
Okay.
lots of debate around whether hydrogen and full electric and all this kind of stuff. You know, we can't dictate to those big players what powertrain they give us. We've got to work with them. So a lot of the work that we've been doing with them is on redundancy. So redundant steering and braking and power. So that's why I've mentioned there's like another power bank for us to use. So if truck loses power, we can have power for a little while to get the truck to a safe spot. But they have all announced that they're having all these future platforms, but we're not working on those yet because they're not there, right? They have some work to do.
Very quick question. So if there is a higher weight, does it add up to the weight capacity that a truck can handle? And then
Yeah, naturally, right? If the GVW of the truck is whatever it is, then yeah, you will exceed that, or you have to carry less cargo. So I think that's why the industry is having that big debate around exactly how to do it. Because if anything, there's another piece of this, which is the trailers. Sometimes the trailers are actually being what they call cubed out, meaning we're filling up more of the volume in the trailer and not weight per se. And so this is another thing, right? So there's lots of unique things in the freight market that affects how quickly I think they will get to being able to jump to brand new powertrains. It's just more complicated. It's a totally different use case. Now and we should be clear, I'm only talking about Class 8, which is over the line truckers. You can imagine what we call kind of middle mile delivery vehicles, so our little Amazon trucks that we see running around all the time. Can probably go electric much quicker across the fleet than the Class 8 tractor trailer. Cool. All right. My pleasure. Thanks, everybody.
For sharing the work that you do at Aurora. And to all of today's attendees, thank you for joining us. Today's presentation will be posted on the Safety 21 website, What's Happening page, along with a link to the video recording of the session. For students who are interested in engaging in transportation topics, the Transportation Club on campus is a great way to connect with fellow transportation enthusiasts. Thank you all for attending our Smart Safety Connection seminar. We hope you'll be able to join us again for our next session. And in the meantime, please feel free to contact us with any question.